So I, male, was born from an affair between my mom and my dad. She already had a baby, my half-sister. My dad didn't know my mom was married when they started dating, but when she got pregnant, her husband found out and left her. My mom was going to get rid of me, but my dad paid her a lot of money. She signed over rights and was not part of my life financially or emotionally. She just birthed me. I don't blame her or hold men or women who leave accountable. Everyone from her side knows about me, however, they don't care. Well, my mom and her husband got back together for my half-sister, and my dad ended up starting a business and earning about 8 figures yearly. Present. My mom contacted my dad saying she wanted to get to know me better. I was skeptical and not sure because I didn't really think about her often, but I decided I would meet her. I met up with her and her family, and it was pretty awkward. These people were not my main family. I had never even met my stepdad or sister. I'd been talking with my mom's side for about 2 months when at a family gathering they all sat me down like I was in an interrogation and told me that the reason they contacted me was because my half-sister has kidney failure and was basically dying. They said they needed a transplant and that I was the only hope. I was annoyed. I couldn't believe them. I just left and my dad picked me up. I told him and he said that it's your choice and to see if I'm eligible to give before I make my decision. I arranged to get tested. I think they thought of this as me agreeing and told everyone the good news. After some time in talks with family, I told them that I would not be donating my kidney. They had done nothing for me, and if the only reason to contact me was for my kidney, then I didn't want anything to do with them. I got loads of hateful messages and calls from people angry, but decided to stand by my decision, and I blocked most of the people spamming me. After that, I got a call from my sister saying I had given false hope and calling me an idiot, insulting me and telling me my life has been a fairy tale and hers has been a wreck. I do feel bad, but I simply do not want to give up my kidney. I could give it with no extreme consequences, you could say, but why would I for people who remembered me and tried buttering me up only for my kidney? A few days ago, I got a call from the remainder of them saying my sister was in critical condition and was going to die, and I was her only hope. Spamming me and sending me photos of her. I consulted my family and friends and they are calling me a massive idiot, saying I can save a life, but I'm choosing not to, yada yada. They said she did nothing wrong and deserves to live, and I'm pretty much hated right now, apart from my dad, who is on my side. A couple years ago, my dad got remarried. His new wife had a daughter and a son that my dad eventually adopted. They both have conditions which affect how their behavior is and honestly make them really annoying to me. This is when I started to dislike going over there, but since they're family, I tried to be nice. It was okay for a while, but about 5 months ago, my stepmother died. After she died, we had to move into a small 2-bedroom apartment. This meant that my dad was sharing a room with my stepbrother and I was now sharing a room with my stepsister. The lack of privacy and her always getting into my personal space and into my stuff is driving me crazy. Without my stepmom, my dad needed a lot of help with the kids. So I often have to watch and take care of them myself, which is exhausting as they need constant attention. Even when my dad is there, there's nowhere to get away from them or have time to myself. I've talked to my dad about it and he says he knows it's tough, but in the end, it just makes me feel guilty for not wanting to be around them so much after they lost their mom. Last week, I had to watch them while my dad went to the grocery store. We were doing fine and just watching TV. She was getting upset because I wouldn't cuddle with her. I really dislike close contact. Then her brother wanted to do something else and got upset because I wasn't doing it with him. I tried to tell her, let's go do the thing your brother wanted to do, but she wanted to finish the movie and wouldn't let go of my arm. It all just went crazy from there with them yelling. I just couldn't handle it anymore, so for the first time I went to my room and locked myself inside. At one point, my stepsister was screaming at the door for me to let her in. When my dad got home a little while later, he started yelling at me for locking myself in the room when the kids were upset. Then he told me I had to go apologize to them and clean up the mess because the kids had thrashed the place. When he said that, I just left. I walked out the door, kept walking for a while. Eventually, I called my mom to pick me up. I told her everything that happened. She talked to my dad about it and got him to understand that it was getting too overwhelming for me. He did apologize to me and said he would work on doing things differently and has been looking for a babysitter to help. But even taking that into account, I just don't want to go back there at all or see them again. It's just so much calmer at my mom's. Like, she and my stepdad have other kids now too, but they're so much easier to deal with, and I actually like spending time with them sometimes. I also actually have privacy there. My dad's been asking when I want to come back because he and the kids have been missing me, and how my stepsister is especially sad. All I can think is at this point, I just don't care if they're sad anymore. I just don't want to go back ever. My stepmom has always been a very insecure person. Same with my dad. He married way out of his league, but his own insecurity drove my mom away. My mom is now married to a really nice guy she met at work. My mom is a very well-respected professor and really beautiful. I mean, she's my mom, so I'm biased, but she gets a lot of compliments. We do yoga and work out together, so she does work hard at keeping up her fitness. While I was at my dad's, I overheard my stepmom making fun of my mom for apparently getting all dressed up trying to win back my dad. And she also said a few unkind words about my mom. My dad was kind of laughing. Granted, it was their private conversation, but I heard it and got mad. I walked into the kitchen and said it's not my mom's fault my stepmom was ugly and that she was working a bad job. And that there was no way my mom would try to get back with my dad. And I may or may not have called them a gremlin-looking couple, which I agree was harsh. My stepmom ended up crying and locking herself in her room. My dad was mad too, but he just begged me not to tell my mom what I'd heard. I haven't told my mom yet, but I have been ignoring my stepmom, and she's been hiding in her room a lot. Mom and Pop were married for 30 years. I'm 26. Always thought they were a dream couple until 5 years ago, when I found out that my dad had fathered a child from an affair that he had in 2006. My mom went crazy when she found out. I honestly believe her mental health cracked and deteriorated from then, and she divorced my dad and moved to the other side of the US. Essentially, I lost my mom to my dad's idiocy. She is not the same woman as she used to be. My dad had always been in this girl's life, but over the past 5 years, I guess because he had no one to keep it a secret from, he's more or less a full-time dad to her. Since the divorce, I've kept my distance from him. I'm just trying to secure my bag, live quietly, and stay away from drama. He has lately started up this crusade of me meeting this girl and developing a brotherly bond with her. I told him it's just not in the cards. I have no interest in picking up a relationship with anybody, and I have my own hatred for my father's new family, and I don't care what anyone says. Therapy ain't fixing that. Believe me, I've tried. It's better for my mental health if I continue to do my thing and not involve myself. It's got to a point where everyone on my paternal side is bugging me for some sort of Christmas miracle meetup. Apparently, this girl wants to know me very much and is begging that she gets to meet me as a Christmas present. I've consistently told everybody no, and I'm also not celebrating Christmas with them in case they try to force anything. The only person on my side in all this is my fiancé, who's the only one who cares about what hurt this might cause me instead of anything else. Just wondering if I'm the idiot for shutting everybody down over this. With all of the cheating parent stories I've seen on this sub lately, I thought I'd see what you all think of mine. Growing up, my dad and I were extremely close. He taught me everything and was a major influence on my sense of right and wrong. I say that to give you an idea as to why it was incredibly hard on me when I walked in on him banging the nanny when I was younger. I told my mom, which resulted in their divorce the next year. My dad quickly married the nanny after he'd gotten her pregnant. They had a daughter around the time I graduated from high school. In the 2 years between their affair coming to light and me graduating, my relationship with my dad not only went downhill, but it basically fell off a cliff. I felt betrayed, and I basically told him that he was dead to me. I had lost all respect for him. I also didn't have any qualms about showing him and his new wife how little I respected them on the very few occasions I actually saw them. It all came to a head when he and his wife showed up to my graduation ceremony with their baby. I was livid. I didn't want him there. I held it together during the ceremony, but at the after party, I blew up at him and her. I don't remember what I said, but he said that if I don't show him and his wife some respect, then he would not be helping pay for my college. I told him he could keep his money. I had no intention of caving to him, no matter what he threatened me with. I never spoke to him again. Eventually, Cassie, full sister, told me that he had been diagnosed with liver cancer and that the prognosis was not good. I told her that I was sorry for her, but I would not go see him. It's probably necessary to say that Cassie would spend summers with them, and she grew quite close to their daughter. They were only 2 years apart in age. About 6 months after Cassie told me about the cancer, she called and said that he was probably not going to make it through the week. Again, I told her I was sorry, but I wouldn't be coming to see him. He died the next day. I refused to attend his funeral. Cassie got a small inheritance, but I've been paying her tuition since it ran out after her first semester. Here's where I'm wondering if I'm the idiot. A few months ago, I got a really long Facebook message from their daughter. Apparently, whatever inheritance she and her mother got was already gone, and she was wondering if I would be able to help her with tuition next year, like I do with Cassie. I said no. Her mom called me later and left a voicemail begging me to help, saying that she knew I could because I was already easily paying for Cassie's tuition, and I shouldn't punish my sister for what she and my father did almost 2 decades ago. I admit that it would not really hurt me financially to pay her tuition, but I really don't want to, because I don't really view her as a sister the way Cassie does. Me and my sister share a car right now, and when I was driving home about 3 or 4 days ago, I got into a small accident that wasn't my fault. The car got completely totaled because the axle got bent. I was fine, and the other driver was fine, but the only car that works, that we can drive, is my mom's, which she takes to work, while we take the bus to our work. My sister has been blaming me over and over for this accident, and I have had enough. I told her to knock it off, but it just didn't work. She's technically my half-sister, share the same dad, and my dad cheated on her mom with my mom and had me. Her biggest insult, she always calls me, is divorce baby, and I hate it with a passion. Our relationship other than that is all right, but if we're ever fighting or I annoy her, she will start saying that over and over. I forgot what exactly happened, but I know she called me the divorce baby who couldn't drive, and I locked myself in my room for the rest of the night. Her birthday was yesterday, and I was still mad at her from the previous night, and where I usually get a gift, I got her a card and just wrote down happy birthday and called it a day. My mom says she is disappointed, and I told her that I'm not going to take her calling me the divorce baby. She said, I get you are mad, but I shouldn't stoop to her level of pettiness. I will try to keep the backstory short. My mother and my dad had me when she was 19 and he was 22. They had a turbulent and short marriage. It was dysfunctional, to say the least, mostly because they only married because of me. They were together for about 4 years before my mother walked out, filed for divorce, and moved on. My dad got full custody, largely because she fully allowed it. I am now 22, doing well in life, and I owe it all to my dad and grandparents, from father's side. They were always there for me. My dad worked so hard his entire life to provide for me. He is pretty much the perfect father in a lot of ways, and I love him very, very dearly. My mother, on the other hand, last I heard from her was when I was a kid, when I received a birthday card from her with a picture of her new family. Now imagine barely remembering your mother and receiving a birthday card with a picture of the person who was supposed to be your mother, looking happy surrounded by strangers and 2 little girls in her and her husband's arms. I'll admit I always pretended it did not bother me, but it crushed me inside and led me to act out during my early years. Luckily, my dad was there to get me back on track. I forgot about them more or less. I pretty much realized that at the end of the day, I simply did not have a mother. I had a dad who was in essence both my mom and my dad, and I had my grandparents to pick up the slack where my dad couldn't. 2 days ago, I got a message on a social media account from one of my half-sisters. She sent me a long message in which she told me her name, how old she is, how old her sister is, and that they had known about me all along but never quite knew how to approach me, but that she really, really wanted to meet her brother, me, and that her mother also wanted to get back in touch with me, and some sob story about how their mom would always cry about me on my birthday. She started telling me about her life, her family. Basically, the message was really, really long. Well, I figured since she couldn't help what happened, and since she was not to blame, I would at least properly respond to her, which I did. I introduced myself, told her how old I am, told her what I was studying, what I did as a job on the side, about my dad, my grandparents, and so forth, just to at least give her a little look inside my life, so she could end her attempts to get to know me and get some closure. I ended the message by making clear to her that I resented my mother and that she should not cry about losing me, given she signed me away to my dad without a moment of doubt, and that I was sorry I never got to meet them, my half-sisters, but I had no interest in getting to know them now or being a part of their lives, and I especially had no interest in knowing my mother, and as far as I was concerned, she could go kick rocks. I'm a 19-year-old girl, and my parents divorced 4 years ago when my dad came home in the middle of the night, woke my mother up, and told her that he never loved her. He had been having an affair with some girl, we'll call her Tiffany, who he met at work. Tiffany was 28, and at the time he was 41. He didn't want us to know right away, but the fighting woke me and my brother up, and my dad pretty much told us that he'd been wasting his life with her mom. He almost cried, but I just really hated him in that moment. He married Tiffany about 2 years later, and she had twin girls. I didn't want to go for every other weekend visits, and he thought I was too old to force me. He'd take me out to dinner and invite me to the house and stuff, but I never spent the night. This put a real strain on our relationship, and recently he's been open about missing me and wanting me to know my 2 little sisters. My brother and Tiffany get along great. I resent everyone, even my brother, for how much they've hurt my mom. My dad convinced me to spend the weekend with him, though I was apprehensive. Tiffany was nice for the first day, like really overeager nice. But when I didn't respond, she got sort of cold and passive-aggressive. Growing up, my dad was this really old-fashioned man's man who never showed any emotion. But now he's always all over Tiffany. I think it's really weird to grab your wife's butt in front of your kids, but it's not an easy thing to bring up. The other night, my dad grilled and we all ate outside. The babies were in their little pool, my dad and brother had been swimming, and my brother had even sucked water up in one of those noodle things and squirted Tiffany at one point. My point is, no one was dressed up, and she didn't mind getting wet. Well, they were kissing, like they always do, like making out. I know Tiffany knows how much it bothers me, and at one point she even looked right at me. So I filled up one of the baby's plastic buckets with water and tossed it at them to cool them off. I get this wasn't the most mature thing, but she's always bragging about how she's the fun parent, and she has so much fun with my brother. And I know if he did it, it would have just been considered a prank. But I guess Tiffany cried afterwards, and now my dad is annoyed. I've been best friends with Dan, 29-year-old male, since we were in high school. He's been married to Cassie, 28-year-old female, for 2 years, and they recently had their first kid. Dan's dad remarried when we were off at college, and Lucifer became his stepmom. Lucifer had a son from a previous relationship. Recently, with the weather getting nicer, Dan and Cassie hosted a small barbecue with immediate family and friends. I was there, Dan, Cassie, and their kiddo were there, Cassie's parents, Dan's dad and Lucy, and a few other people. Everyone was gushing over the baby and how good Cassie was looking. She had a rough pregnancy and had been resting up ever since the baby came. She also had a C-section. This is relevant. Now, Lucy is a nasty person, and Dan has never been her biggest fan. The topic of Cassie's C-section came up, and Lucy said something nasty about Cassie not being a real woman and a true mother for not having given birth naturally. It was pretty hurtful, and I could see it on Cassie's face that she was upset. I ended up blurting out that it wasn't surprising that Lucy had said that, considering she was a huge witch. When she gave birth, her kid probably just slipped out and fell on the floor. Dan laughed, but his dad and Lucifer were pretty upset. They ended up leaving shortly after. I'm wondering if I went too far.